Well, yes, thank you first of all for inviting me to chat at your wonderful building, may I say. And I'm really here to talk to you about my recent trip to Africa and my rare physician shots. I say rare, you'll see why shortly. Although I do feel coming back from Africa in a building like this, I should have like sort of a lion chucked over there and a few other rare specimens, but you'll see them in a second. So just before I do show you those, I wanted to just talk about a couple of shots and generally the making of those photos. And I want to sort of really, look into the sort of relationship between, artist and sitter. And also all about capturing, how the process you go and about capturing an actual personality. So this picture here was Boy George, and I shot it about 3 years ago now, and it was part of an exhibition called Flipside, which was all about DJs and music producers and what they do outside of making dance music. So the initial process starts with, we have a long chat. So I was out walking my dog Fuji, funny enough, and she and he gave me a call and we chatted and he talked about everything he's into, which was cooking randomly, cycling, all these various things, and even photography as well. But he mentioned this army theme, which was again quite random, but we decided to go with the army theme, which sort of, it felt right because he had a very playful nature and he loves getting dressed up. So we went along with this army theme idea. So, the initial process, you go off and you source a location, you source lots of props, play with lots of decommissioned guns, which is fun, speak to lots of soldiers, ex-soldiers, and there's quite a lot of, that happens before you even get anywhere near actually taking the photograph. And then the day that the actual shoot happens, and in this case, which is what I'm telling the story, it's a beautiful sunny day in mid-November. So we've got this wonderful location. It's all through the trees, all the lights coming through, and you've got this lovely glow. Unfortunately, no Boy George at this point, so it's a bit annoying. So then you get the phone call, which often happens when you photograph rock stars or people or celebrities, where they're not there and they're late, and he's on his way back from London, or sorry, from Birmingham to London. He's got to then get his car and drive back out, and we're by Oxford, so he's coming back the same way he's just come. So eventually they get on set, quite late, quite stressed, lots of conversations lots of phone calls where they've got lost on the way or can't find this dreaded place. And his whole entourage comes with him, which includes his makeup artist, who's wearing a tiny little stiletto heels and wearing a muddy field, middle of nowhere, had to direct her to a shipping container to do his makeup. And then you eventually get them on set, on the actual location where we wanted to shoot. By this point, it's completely dark. The light that I wanted is gone. And you have to sort of do something else. So with him, we pumped lots of smoke into the picture and gave him this sort of frame to work with. And I tend to generally do that, sort of come up with the right spot and then give them a little bit of leeway just within that to do their own thing. And George was phenomenal. He just instantly clicked into all these different poses. You'd think he's done it before. And he'd literally one after the other, and this kind of end up with this sort of a portrait which was really dramatic and a little bit of theatre, really. It wasn't necessarily the picture I wanted, though, which is why I wanted to show you this picture, really. But after we'd done that, you walk away and we're having a chat and we did a few selfies and all the things you do, packing up all the equipment. I did the second port. It's very red, isn't it? I see what you mean, Paul. Very red. It's not that red at all. I did the second shot, but I think what's wonderful about portrait photography is that you sort of, in a very short period of time, you have this very sort of intense relationship with who you're photographing. They trust you to start with, and you sort of, the mud, they get lost, all the chats we had beforehand, the actual first shoot that we did, all sort of culminates in this sort of bonding experience. And then the second shot was a lot softer because we spent quite a lot of time together now and we have a relationship. And I think that's one of the joys of it, and which I hence much prefer that actual photo to the original photo that was used. Coming on to another big character. This is Goldie. So when I chatted to Goldie, this is another thing. I think when you shoot celebrities, you obviously know quite a bit about them already. So it's finding that other thing that they do, or that bit that's personal to you. And he's a very talented painter, and is quite successful now. And when I turned up at his house, he was ferocious, absolutely hated me the moment I walked in. So we pretty much argued for the first 20, 30 minutes, where he was telling me what he expected I wanted, because he's been photographed so many times. He just presumed it was the gold teeth and the look that he always does. So we had this sort of fierce battle, and started taking pictures. I got him to change out his clothes, to dip his hands in paint, and put his mask on as well to cover his teeth. And as the picture started coming through, you could sort of, we shoot to, I used to shoot on 10x8, but now we shoot to a computer, so you can see the pictures coming. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because it's kind of, what ends up happening is a collaboration, really. The portrait becomes something that you build together between your sitter and you. And as it was coming through, he was, he could see what we were trying to do, so he was getting a more intense look and really sort of taking part. And you end up with, a picture which is, I think, quite well represents, who he is, or who he was to me that day. As it turns out, he's absolutely lovely. We stayed all afternoon, played with his 2 Siberian Huskies, and looked at his lovely Japanese Acer tree. So he was really quite a pleasant character. But the reason I'm here is to talk to you about the African shoot. So I was involved in a project called Physicians for Africa, and that's something the Royal College of Physicians and I never get this quite right, the East Central, Southern and Africa College of Physicians, ESCOP, if you can say that, are involved with. And what they're trying to do is, to give you some figures to put it into context, there's 280 physicians per 100,000 in the UK. In Africa, in Tanzania, there's 1. So, and of that 1, the majority of them actually stay in towns. So they go and train in the big cities, and they stay there. So regionally, there's hardly any physicians at all. So I had a call from a friend of mine who's working on the project, and he's based out in Uganda. And he mentioned about this and if anything I could do to help. And so he had me at Uganda, so booked me the flight, and I'm there straight away. So flew out to Uganda, and one of the places we visited, which is where we took this picture, was a hospital in Kampala. And nothing really prepares you for the first time you go into an African hospital ward. It is quite shocking, and everything's very, I was there with some other physicians, and all the equipment's very backwards. But we met David. David is a very kind, caring, nice person. So I think when I saw him, I was really looking forward to taking his picture, and I took this out in the gardens of the hospital. And I'm quite happy the way it captured his caring nature. This is young Florentius from Kenya. We actually shot it by Entebbe, and that's Lake Victoria to the right. Entebbe obviously very famous for Idi Amin and the Israeli rescue mission. But I think with the whole series, we felt that, going back to Liz and regarding symbolism, that the white coat was really vital, that we have that white coat. Apart from in Africa just being about a medical professional, they hold quite an important stature just within society there. So we felt that was an important part to have in all the photos. This is Tamara from Malawi, and stunningly beautiful, very glamorous lady. She actually, when you pull back from the shot, she had these gorgeous little red shoes which looked wonderful against the green background. But I think what we were trying to do with all of this series was really have that face which is all about that sort of compassion, the kindness, sincerity, and the seriousness of the project, which I think we started to get with Tamara. So this is Josephine Oju, and again, I sort of always try to find, the right location, and then put them in it. I find if it's too over complicated, you sort of lose the person within the picture. As you'll see there, she looks quite fierce, mainly because if you look at the shadow, it's very tiny. So it's the midday sun, and it was boiling hot, so she wasn't too pleased, I don't think, really. But she did stick it out, fortunately, but a great character. And this is Everest, who you can see just there, and it's Professor Everest Najani. He's the president of ETSACOP, and the man sort of driving this important project. He, when asked about why he's, one of his answers was that he's convinced that the project has the potential to improve the health of millions. So it's quite humbling, really, when you're taking someone's portrait and you realise that the person you're photographing is involved in something much bigger and quite important. But, I mean, what a fantastic face. So I was dying to photograph him as soon as I saw him. And realistically, you would have to be a baboon not to take a good picture of someone like that. This, I wanted to show you Kenneth. Now, we were sort of driving back to the airport, actually, and I suggested we pop in one more hospital, and which I don't normally do. The other portraits, we got to meet them over a few days, but we photographed Kenneth, and I've shown that really because I think it's his story about why he took up the profession he has. I found quite interesting. So to quote, he wrote, "At age 8 to 12, he dreamed of being a Catholic priest. Luckily, he was not accepted at the parish due to his then short stature. So I didn't know you had to be a certain height to be a priest, but there you go. At 13 to 15, he dreamed of being an engineer because he excelled in mathematics, physics and chemistry. So he's definitely not your average kid from Gravesend, quite bright. And then it's his last bit, from age 16 to 18, he changed his mind yet again, hoping to become a surgeon. He wanted to improve surgical outcomes so that the future children do not lose their fathers like he had lost his after a complication of elective surgery." So really, he's a genuine hero character. And I think that's what my experience showed me, is even if you're shooting, pop stars and rock stars or whatever all the time, these people really are using their life for a good cause. And he's also exactly the kind of person ETSACOP are looking to, to train further. While we were there, though, we did go on a camping trip, and on the way we did get some regional people. It was quite glamping, actually. But and this is I didn't want to do this, actually. I actually thought the last thing I wanted to do was be, a white imperialist photographer shooting a lady from Africa in a bush. But I seem to have managed to shoot a lady in Africa in a bush. But she was, we had a chat with her, and she was suffering, it looked like cataracts. And when we asked her, have you ever thought about doing anything about that? And it's far too far to go and see a doctor. She couldn't afford it. And also she kind of wouldn't trust them, really. There's still quite a lot of cultural change that needs to happen. In some parts, they still have witch doctors as well, okay? So just moving on very quickly, this was a shot of 3 lads. Again, the boy in the middle had a problem with his arm, which could be easily solved. And just to conclude, which is, I think, what I wanted to show you is this picture, just because I think it summarises the joy of portraiture and why it's so relevant today. We saw this little sort of collection. We walked over to this little hut and poked our head into the hut. And you saw in the hut there was sort of, it's very tiny, it was very dark. And there were 3 ladies as we poked our head in, sat here, and 2 over there, and they all kind of turned in a very much, "You're not from around these parts, are you?" sort of way. And then we realised it was like the local pub, and that's why they were all congregated by there. And we had to take quite a few pictures. We sort of gave them orange juices rather than, which they were quite disappointing about. But the lady I wanted to photograph was the lady in purple. But unfortunately, at this point, the lady next to her really wanted her picture taken too, so I had to say, the one with the beautiful cheekbones. So, and then you saw the girl with the white top and the red skirt below, and she was determined to definitely be in the picture as well. And it turns out she's like the local tyrant. So she bosses all the other kids around, because I did some more pictures later. So she had to have her whole posse in there as well. And And as I was going back and back and back, I mean, literally everyone in the running to be in the picture. So I had to sort of stop, or I would have been in England by the time I got everybody in the picture. But I think I wanted to finish with it, because if you look at the boy on the left as well, he's back to the Boy George picture, really. He's got all that style. And I think the joy for me of portrait photography is you get to meet all these characters and personalities and learn all about them. And it's an enriching experience. And it's, I think, the very essence of being human, really, to record and be interested in other people. But thank you very much.